for me, my biggest blind spot in becoming and being a strategist. If you don't mind just kind of talking about the importance of forecasting.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, when we think about forecasting, we often think about, people trying to predict, in the future, X will happen on Y date, right? And we go back to sort of the cultural side of predicting, which is, the magic 8-ball, the Ouija board, Zoltar. If you remember all of those things from the 80s and 90s, the sort of the cultural side of in that case it was fortune telling, right? Which is essentially tell us about
I'm
the
thinking
future.
of like the movie Big with Tom Hanks.
Totally,
that's
Zoltar.
What I'm thinking.
Yeah,
okay, just want to make sure that.
So that was all sort of the cultural side of can you predict the future? Can you see around the corner and tell us what's going to happen? The cultural side of sort of fortune telling, I think, has done no good service to the professional side of forecasting, which the professional side of forecasting are the people who have to do this for a living. So you think about analysts in various parts of the government that have to forecast about geopolitical issues.
Yeah.
You think about.
I instantly thought of analyst.
Yeah,
That's what I
right.
thought of.
So you have an intelligence analyst,
Yes.
right? Or you have a venture capitalist. I mean, a venture capitalist is looking at 10 different companies to invest in and trying to predict, right, forecast which one of these is going to be successful. And in many cases, they get usually 7 to 8 of those wrong and 2 to 3 of those right, and the 2 to 3 pay off for the rest. But what they're doing is forecasting. So it's easy to sort of be a little bit dismissive about forecasting because it's so hard to do. And the NCAA bracket for March Madness is a great example, right?
Sure.
I mean, Warren Buffett has offered several $1 billion worth of rewards if someone can get an accurate bracket, and it's never happened, right?
Sure.
Because, again, it's so difficult to sort of predict that. But the people who do it for a living actually have been able to really explain kind of the craft behind it. And that's what I go into in the book. There was a professor, Philip Tetlock, who looked at forecasters and basically tried to determine their habits of mind and whether or not, from their habits, you could basically teach it to other people. And what he found is that they approach problems much differently than the rest of us. And just a few tidbits is they will basically take a really big question, like, is X going to happen in the future? And they break it down into smaller parts. So they don't try to answer the big question. They break it into smaller parts, and then they assign probability that something's going to happen, right? Because in their experience, it's never helpful to think that something's going to happen either 0% of the time or 100% of the time.
Sure.
It's able to sort of calibrate some level of likelihood, probability. And then they, again, start to use the information they have, the data points, to sort of stress test those ideas. And they continue to evaluate and revise and recalibrate. And so they're never really willing to just give you an answer and say, this is going to happen 100% of the time or zero. They'll tell you, well, this is likely to happen 60% of the time, and they're always revising that.
Sure.
And so, again, it's the habits of mind from, in this case, it was super forecasters, people who are really good at forecasting, is what I cover in the book, is many of those same habits of mind are what strategists do, right? They're often asked to sort of see around the corner.
They are.
And how do you go about doing that?
Yeah.
And so I provide some practical tips of how you can do that. And one of the best ways, honestly, is to keep a little scorecard of yourself of your own predictions. And again, it's not the prediction that X will happen on Y date. That's sort of a fool's errand, right? It's like trying to stick a bullseye with a noodle, right? Like, technically, I guess you could, but the odds of that's happening is longer than long. So the key here is to be able to kind of keep tabs on trends and different patterns that you see evolving, and then start to keep a little bit of your own scorecard of I think the world is evolving in this way, and here's my theory of things to come.
And do you think it's important, or I guess important's not the right word, but do you think it's maybe easier to do that within your own maybe organization to start? So like thinking about trends within the video industry, for example, right? And there's all kinds of forces that are coming in. I think everyone's freaking out about AI. Like AI is going to take our job. Well, no, I don't think I'm going to see a robot build all the cameras, bring in all the equipment, set up the lighting. if so, maybe Steve would be like, cool, I want one of those, because he's the one that does all the heavy lifting. but I don't think that's going to happen. But to maybe think about other, trends and see if you can kind of see things happening before others. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, so
like start in your own industry or?
Yeah, great point. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think
Okay.
it's both from the inside and also from the out, because
Okay.
the inside is really understanding kind of where your competitors are and that context.
Okay.
But oftentimes when an industry gets disrupted, it gets disrupted from the outside, right?
Great point.
And so understanding those macro level trends for the rest of society is really important. So I would say it's not an either or, it's both.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to rediscover your own story, please connect with us at any of the links below. My name is Jessie Heron. Thanks for taking a break with me.